Good afternoon to all of you. Okay. So we are discussing about Indo-Pacific. In Indo-Pacific, East Asia. In East Asia, Japan, China. Fine, this is what we have discussed. Now we'll talk about Southeast Asia. इसमें हमने एक और South China Sea. We did also this South China Sea. इसमें अभी एक चीज और है जो हम बात करेंगे USA नॉर्थ कोरिया. लेकिन ये ग्लोबल इशू है तो इसकी कैटेगरी थोड़ी अलग हो जाती है. We'll talk about this. Now first we'll talk about Southeast Asia. First we'll talk about Southeast Asia. वो आएगा, वो साउथ एशियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में आएगा. वो OBR ईस्ट एशिया से ज़्यादा साउथ एशिया और सेंट्रल एशिया में. OBR का अगर आप पूरा प्रोजेक्ट देखेंगे सो दैट इज़ नॉट मच इन ईस्ट एशिया. तो उसकी पूरी ईस्ट एशिया में नहीं है उसका इम्प्लीकेशन. उसका इम्प्लीकेशन है सेंट्रल एशिया, साउथ एशिया, अफ्रीका, वहाँ उसका इम्प्लीकेशन है. तो उस रेफरेंस में हम बात करेंगे. Now when we talk about Southeast Asia, we'll talk about Southeast Asia. In general, when we say Southeast Asia, we are talking about, in general, ASEAN countries. We are talking about ASEAN countries. These countries opened their economy way back in 1970s. Opened their economy in way back 1970s. At one point of time, they are known as Asian tigers. They are known as Asian tigers. Economically, they are relatively developed. They are relatively developed, and technology base export. When you say technology based export, so it is not like they deal in the primary sector. They deal in a manufacturing sector and service sector. They deal in a technology based exports of these. And China, US and Japan are close economic partners of Southeast Asian countries. Are close economic partner of Southeast Asian countries. There is a heavy dependency of Southeast Asia country over China. Heavy dependency of Southeast Asian countries over China. Fine? Chaliye. When it comes to political terms, when it comes to understand them political terms, during the Cold War period, most of the Southeast Asian countries were along with the United States of America, or you can say part and parcel of NATO. Most, सब नहीं कह रहा हूँ मैं, most of them. Vietnam was definitely not part and parcel of them, and few also remain part of NAM. Indonesia is one of them basically, but in general, US influence was quite high politically. US influence was quite high politically, and there was a consistent effort of these countries not to get much engaged in Cold War politics. Not to get much engaged in Cold War politics. और इस इलाके में यूएस का डोमिनेशन क्यों है हम पहले डिस्कस कर चुके हैं कि लाइक फिलीपींस, सिंगापुर, जापान, यूएस हैज इट्स नेवल बेसिस. They all are, most of them are security partner of United States of America. Apart from that, you can find out it was US that was helping in opening of their economies. It was US financial market and banks helped them when the East Asian crisis was also there, that is also related with the US financial market only. So, political and economic integration was much more to them. There was a major issue in these countries is related to democracy. It is mainly related to democracy. Not much settled democracy, not much settled democracy, and when it comes to the social and cultural part, so you will find out socially and culturally they are distinct, but there is westernization, distinct but there is westernization, लेकिन फिर भी they successfully maintain their distinct culture, Now in general, what Southeast Asian countries are looking forward, I explained it earlier also. They both want to maintain distance, or I would say in other language that the Southeast Asian countries do not want to be in the mid-fire of rivalry of China and USA in the region. They want to continue their economic relations with both of the parts, but at the same time they want to get rid of China as well as US political influences. Political influences का मतलब होता है कि आपको क्या करना चाहिए और क्या नहीं करना चाहिए. They want to get rid of political influences of China and US together. That is what their political objective when it comes to the Southeast Asian countries. This basic information related to Southeast Asian countries that will help you to build up a frame. Now in this context, how we see India, what they are looking forward in context of India. उनको इंडिया के बारे में क्या चाहिए, क्या सोचते हैं वो. So see, if you divide from 1947 up to 1990, it's a broader timeline. During this timeline you can find out India and Southeast Asian countries relations in general. India and Southeast Asia relationship in general was limited, except Vietnam, later on even with Singapore. This was the two countries with whom India share very good relationship. सिंगापुर के साथ शेयर करने के एक रीजन है इंडियन डायस्पोरा, Tamil diaspora in Singapore. It's huge in number, and surprisingly Tamilian is the second language of Singapore. I mean, the numbers is so high, and this community has worked as a bridge between developing good relationship of Singapore and India. जो डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट स्टार्ट हुई वो दिल्ली से सिंगापुर के लिए डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट नहीं थी, लेकिन चेन्नई से सिंगापुर के लिए डायरेक्ट फ्लाइट थी. सबसे पहले वहीं स्टार्ट हुई, बिकॉज द नंबर ऑफ पीपल आर फ्रीक्वेंटली मूविंग इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. मलेशिया, ये मतलब आपको it will help you to just to understand. Malaysia was relatively a competitor of India. Competitor in that sense that Malaysia believe India has a potential to expand its influence in Southeast Asia. India has a potential to expand its influence in Southeast Asia. And during the Cold War period time, because of policy of NAM and Seattle, political platform was completely missing. No convergence of the political interest, no convergence of the political interest. So, Indian engagement in that area was very much limited. Indian engagement in this area was very much limited during this period. कोई बहुत इंटेंस रिलेशनशिप नहीं है. एक रीजन अगर मैं इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव से कहूं आपसे कि व्हाई नॉट इंडिया ट्राई टू इवॉल्व वेरी गुड रिलेशनशिप विद द साउथ ईस्ट एशियन, व्हाई नॉट द वे वी आर मेकिंग एफर्ट्स टुडे, व्हाई नॉट द सिमिलर एफर्ट्स हैज बीन एक्सपेंडेड अर्लियर. यू विल फाइंड आउट 2-3 रीजंस. देखिए हमेशा डाइवर्सिफाइड तरीके से सोचिए. एक तो रीजन बिल्कुल सही है कि देयर इज अ इकोनॉमिक रीजन, बिकॉज these all countries went for economic reforms in 70s, and till 90s Indian economy was a closed economy. So being a closed economy, there was not much space for the economic cooperation. This is economic angle. When it comes to the political angle, again you can find the difference of NAM and Seattle. This was second economic difference. Third important thing you can find Indira doctrine or Indira Gandhi doctrine, because her policy was to make India South Asia centric power after Nehru, because Nehru was looking for a broader outlook, reaching up to the Afro-Asian countries or developing countries. But once Indira Gandhi came to power, she made a shift or U-turn in the Indian foreign policy, looking forward only to make India as a major South Asian power. मतलब ऐसा कह सकते हैं, Nehru was looking to make India as a global power. Although militarily we are lacking, economic consolidation was not completed at that time. Just with the diplomatic power, with the policy of NAM, he tried to make India as a major global power. But after 1962 war, that was a time or a water line you can say, India realized it well, कि without being a military power, without being an economic power, such goals cannot be achieved. And a realistic decision. Why we say कि Indira Gandhi policy is a pragmatic? Because she made a shift, a U-turn, and this U-turn was that India should be more focused on South Asia, and her entire you can say focus was to ensure India as a major regional power. तो आपको दिखाई देगा, first what she did, that she reduced the dependency of India over US. The first thing is specifically in food security. Green Revolution was one of the major initiatives. Then we went for military modernization. Till the Nehru time, there was no military modernization. It was Indira Gandhi who initiated military modernization of India. Resultant 1974 nuclear explosion was a very classic example. Then technological modernization, that was again at the time of the Indira Gandhi. And also she has taken a very proactive approach. हम ऐसा नहीं कह सकते हैं, जब दूसरे देश के लोग ये कहते हैं, they said she has taken a very interventionist approach, but we'll write it कि she has taken a very proactive engaged to be get engaged in South Asian or regional issues and matters. रियलिटी ये थी, अगर श्रीलंकन से बात करोगे तो दे विल टॉक अबाउट शी बिकम वेरी इंटरवेंशनिस्ट, एंड इट वाज शी हु इंस्टिगेटेड द LTT to emerge as a major organization, and there was a complete continuous supply of arms, ammunition and training to the LTT fighters till the Rajiv Gandhi time, basically that start way back from Indira Gandhi. So हमारे perspective से क्या होता है, it's a proactive approach in addressing regional issues of the time, So she was more engaged. If we talk about कि what type of politics initiative, what type of initiative has taken, चलिए, from the other perspective, she consistently utilize power to pressure our neighborhood, This power is something like she made it very clear, if some regional issues are there, it has to be solved by the country. If country is unable, then India is ready to solve or resolve the problem, but strictly no engagement of US or Russia. No engagement of US or Russia. When Tamilian problem was emerging in Sri Lanka, interestingly, it was British and US both offered to supply arms as well as send their forces. It was Indira Gandhi stood firm. It will bring Cold War to the South Asia if these two powers forces will move, and Sri Lanka has to withdraw this proposal. In fact, एक radio channel start किया था श्रीलंका ने, Voice of America, that was also stopped by her. It will again bring Cold War to this place. This is just a simple example. You will find out there was a strict control over Nepal, over Bhutan. And when I am saying control in the sense like their behavior or their policies to the outside world. So when we say Indira Doctrine, part 1 of the Indira Doctrine is there that none of the South Asian countries get engaged with any of the global leaders like US and Russia, USSR. This line was clear, लेकिन उसको justify कैसे किया कि it will disturb the peace and stability of South Asia and Cold War will overshadow South Asian region. So the line of justification is that we want our region to be stable and peaceful. So if you will bring US, other will bring USSR, and the waters of Indian Ocean and South Asia will become tense. So it is very clear that there should not be. This is first point of Indira Doctrine. The second important line what she has taken, that anything that happen in the region, it will be resolved by country, or India is always ready to offer its help and no other outside intervention. Now with these two policy, her entire political objective was to make India as a regional power. अब इसका connection देखिए, just holding military power, holding a very good economy will not make you regional power. It will make you regional power when you proactively get engaged, started directing, guiding, shaping regional politics. When you try to make South Asia as a India centric, then only we say India is a regional power. And she was the one who tried to dictate the South Asian order. और उसी order का पहला हिस्सा था no communication, no military contact to the US and USSR. Although India itself went for a 1971 treaty with the Russian side. But what we said, it is a treaty of peace and friendship. Because in the entire treaty, not a single military clause is there. Surprisingly, 1971 की treaty में एक military clause एक भी नहीं है. That is master stroke of diplomacy, that Russians agreed to send their warship without holding a single military clause of 1971. This is something a country is helping you militarily without getting engaged in any kind of military term, because she has to lead NAM, she has to apply her own Indira Doctrine in the entire Indian Ocean, in South Asian region. So this is how so she established and you can say gripped South Asia under Indian influence. ये उसका positive aspect था, and it is because of that we say she applied hardcore realism in order to deal with the South Asian countries. Even it is required, Indian Raw was very much active in Pakistan, very much active. It was the time of Indira Gandhi, Indian Raw was very much active. Madhesis were completely supported by Indian side in Nepal. It was in terms of providing them economic help or facilitating their views. In fact, in Nepal, ऐसा कहते हैं कि India helped to set up a press and magazines that was completely making a good Indian image. ये जो government in exile in Himachal Pradesh, it was properly established and structured only at the time of Indira Gandhi. It was not at the time of the Nehru basically. It was at the time of Indira Gandhi, and she officially supported that government. China raised the question about this. She said that India is just looking forward that our track record of the human rights should remain intact. It is nothing related to helping a government. We are treating them just as on humanitarian ground. But Tibetan card made alive only by Indira Gandhi. You will find out, and heavy militarization of India, heavy militarization. That all. Indian military size triple हो गया था, recruitment training, it all happened in such a way during the Indira Gandhi time. So, just giving you this basic information, during this period, Indian foreign policy was highly South Asian centric. South Asian centric, और टारगेट ये था मेकिंग इंडिया एज अ मेजर रीजनल पावर, एंड द पॉलिसी वी एडॉप्टेड known as Indira Doctrine, making it as a Indira Doctrine. इसका एक एस्पेक्ट है इंटरनल कंसोलिडेशन. Internal consolidation. When it come to internal consolidation, that is militarily, economically. Militarily, economically. When it come to external one, reducing dependency over United States of America. It was her prime target. Then gradual withdrawal फ्रॉम अफ्रीका. हम इसको कहते हैं डाउन टोनिंग रेटोरिक ऑफ एफ्रो एशियन. आई मीन ऐसा नहीं कि उन्होंने छोड़ दिया, बट जस्ट डाइल्यूटेड दैट आइडिया. डाउन टोनिंग रेटोरिक ऑफ एफ्रो एशिया. Prohibiting Cold War to spill in South Asia. Regional problems must be resolved through regional mechanism. सुनने में कितना सही लग रहा है. Regional problems should be resolved with the regional mechanism. But who is going to resolve? It is we are going to resolve. US talk about in similar. This is global war against terrorism. Technically, it is a US war against terrorism, but it has been named global war. We'll use the soldiers of the other country, resources of the other country to fulfill our own targets. So, regional problems should be resolved through regional mechanism, and India offered its help to all South Asian countries. इसी को हम इंदिरा डॉक्ट्रिन कहते हैं. ये आप एक ब्रैकेट या बॉक्स में लिख लीजिए. इट विल हेल्प कि कैसे इंडियन पॉलिसी चेंज हो रही है. No, it was, it further intensified the rivalry of India and Pakistan. You downsized Pakistan by creating another country, Bangladesh. In fact, Pakistan was highly threatened. Now, what next? Maybe she can think of some other. Sri Lanka was threatened. ऐसा तो नहीं होगा, there will be separate Tamilian land of the northern of the Sri Lanka, an independent country. Nepal was worried, maybe some Madesi land or country will be there. The entire South Asian countries were, heavily threatened because of her approach. This was the time when these countries started looking forward to making a space for outside power beyond US. So, by 1978, when China started emerging, if you see China-South Asia relationship, that history also starts from 1978 onwards, when Bangladesh, when Sri Lanka, they all started getting engaged with China. But still, she managed, there should be no political and military space for China. So, it was just the primary economic relationship. Until unless in 90s, when India withdrew from Sri Lanka, China's military influence was started taking build up there basically. So definitely this policy was very clear that no other party should be there and we are going, and they are so afraid that they have started looking forward to balance India, and because they cannot think of the US, because he will say, look, you are bringing Cold War, you are bringing instability, you are destroying peace. So no country is ready to take that burden basically. So they are looking for the alternative, and it was China definitely. And the Chinese opening of the economy starts by 1978. So the gradual economic interfere of China, or engagement of China in South Asia, that start by 1980 onwards. और वो 10 साल जो है 10 years, that is a very crucial in developing good economic base of China and South Asian nations. So because of, understand, because of political factor, or because of political ideological factor, because of economic factor, and because of India's own policy, because of India's own policy, that was much South Asian centric, that was much South Asian centric. That was much South Asian centric. So because of this, Indian relationship or Indian engagement with Southeast Asia was limited. I guess this point is very clear why Indian initial engagement with Southeast Asia was very much limited. इसको आप, you can write in just 3 lines also, there was no political convergence because of Cold War period, and India adopted for NAM and they went for CATO. At that time, Asian tigers are holding export oriented economy, Indian economy was a closed economy, and Indira Gandhi was much focused on South Asia centric policy. It is these factors that led to the limited relationship with the Southeast Asian country. Southeast Asia was never at that time a priority. ये एक और रीजन है कि म्यांमार हैज बीन नेवर एक्सप्लोर्ड ड्यूरिंग दैट टाइम. इसको हम बहुत बड़ी स्ट्रेटेजिक मिस्टेक मानते हैं कि वी नेवर एक्सप्लोर्ड म्यांमार, एंड इट वाज चाइना दैट हैज increased its influence in Myanmar. Otherwise, Myanmar could be a major route, as China did that, use Myanmar and move to the Bay of Bengal. Map को देखिए ध्यान से, China has no way to enter into Bay of Bengal, but it is because of Myanmar only they moved into the Bay of Bengal region. So India, failed to block its water. There was a इसके लिए आपको क्या करना चाहिए था? Close relationship with the Myanmar, what you can stop. मैं थोड़ी सी background history बता रहा हूँ आपको. Till 1956, India and Myanmar relationship was very good. एक personal factor भी था, because at that time Nehru and Myanmari Prime Minister were friends and they studied together basically, and that relationship was very strong during that time. But in Myanmar, because of the British colonial impact, there was a huge Indian population handling economy, their administrative and railway sector. This is surprising. मैं आपको railway का data देता हूँ. 80% of the employees were Indian employees in Myanmar. और म्यांमार का railway India के बाद evolve होता है. I guess till 1935 Myanmar was also dealt from the Indian side. By 1935 Britishers separated Myanmar. When they are separating Myanmar, huge Indian workers which were working over there, they remain. ये जो problem of citizenship आप देख रहे हैं, it is because of that कि those Indians who settled down in Myanmar during the Britishers time, should we recognize them as a Myanmari citizen or not? So till 56, India and Myanmar relationship was very much close, and reason you can find out because of Nehru's own personal influence. उसके बाद चीजें बदल जाती हैं. Then you can find military general Nevin was there, and what he did that he mobilized people. Okay, because of this democratic system, we are completely lacking the development, and all the fruits are going only to the Indians. And then what they did, they bring their first citizenship act. वो 1955 में आया था, जिसमें रिफॉर्म 2 साल बाद किया गया था. In that particular citizenship act, see today's Rohingyas problem, they all lost their citizenship by Myanmari 1955 act, and Indians also lost their citizenship. So there was a movement of the Indian people to the Indian side. तो इंडिया में आ गए तो यहाँ उतना इशू नहीं था, रोहिंग्यास कहाँ जाएंगे, because that country belongs to them. And Bangladesh was not before 1971, although today what अभी म्यांमार यही कहता है ना कि these people belong to the Bangladesh. तो Bangladesh was not by 1971. Before 90 it was East Pakistan basically. So technically, how come you can say this? They all belong to the Bangladesh. If you say these are the areas, then which timeline of the history you are taking? अगर आप और पहले चले जाएंगे तो you will find out they might have come from somewhere else. So this is not a logic basically. But the real reason was that by 1955 they want to create political economic space for the local Buddhist population. And this is what they did. And by 1955 Citizenship Act, Indians and Rohingyas lost, you can say, citizenship. The railways, which was completely dominated by Indians, almost 30-40% people lost their jobs of the railways. Most of the Indian businesses were taken over by Myanmari government, and they incorporate local Buddhist people. इसीलिए when the military rule was established, there was no resistance in Myanmar even in the early year, because the initiative which has been taken by military junta, तो उन्होंने सबसे पहला तो इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रक्चर में रिफॉर्म कर दिया, एंड दे इनकॉर्पोरेटेड बुद्धिस्ट monks in a huge numbers. State started providing them support. They ensured that the Rohingyas and Indian must not get anything over there, and they successfully did it. But Nehru did a big mistake, that Nehru supported, rather than military junta, Nehru supported existing prime minister, and the resultant was that India-Myanmar relationship started declining. Very interesting part कि at that time in Myanmar, KMT का नाम आप देखेंगे जो इंडिया के नॉर्थ ईस्ट में भी है, there was a communist movement going on in Myanmar, and it was well backed and supported by China, and China was fighting against the Myanmari government, supporting them to fight against the Myanmari government. Interesting thing happened, the movement military junta was there, China completely changed the stand, or the political party which was funded by China completely withdraw support. In fact, China helped in elimination of the entire communist movement of Myanmar, and they established good relationship with the military junta. They made a U-turn in their politics, and India continued to support the democratic regime for the Myanmar. And at that time, one popular leader of Myanmar, abhi hai, Aung San, she was studying in India. She was a student leader, LSR. She was studying there basically she was in the graduation, and she was also engaged, and she continued to write in India about this democracy. And later on, India continued to support her. So India completely lost the political base in Myanmar, and China got a complete takeover of Myanmar. Myanmar is a highly backward country because of their tough geographical terrain and colonial rule. Colonial rule was another important factor. So it was just open country, and China flushed money, China flushed business, and gradually started taking over. Timber का बहुत बड़ा space है, सब China के पास है. Mining, everything belongs to China, and China also moved to the Bay of Bengal region, and India completely lost a strategic space that was very important for the Indian side. हमको ज़रूरत ही नहीं महसूस हो रही थी कि till the Indira Gandhi time, because we are a South Asian centric part. Now you can understand role of Myanmar, because we are looking for Southeast Asia. Things has been completely changed. देखिए foreign policy में जो far sighting होती है, this is maybe today, tomorrow, 50 years, you are going to become a world leader. So you need to always think in a strategic way. It's not about you are a small country. The theoretical model यही कहता है, doesn't matter you are a small country or a big country. You need to always serve your interest, and just try to understand that no one should be given a strategic space around you. इंदिरा गांधी की पॉलिसी को कंपेयर किया जाता है अमेरिकन और चाइनीज पॉलिसी से. मैं पहले बता चुका हूं, जस्ट गिविंग अ ब्रीफ. Like after the before the First World War, American foreign policy, making distance of the world completely focused on itself. China from 1948 to 1978. Non-intervention in most part of the world, only 2-3 intervention completely focused on consolidating its position. Indira Gandhi also, she withdrew her engagement or India's engagement from abroad. Look at the Nehruvian policy, complete engagement with the all newly independent countries, every time moving to UN and giving speech. Indira Gandhi was not interested at all. She maintained all those ties, but that was not the focal and the central area. The entire area was internal consolidation. Internally, Indian economy militarily must be strong. Then the next step is South Asia, and we consolidated our position in South Asia. And that is why by 90s, again logical step is Southeast Asia. Okay, now you see the way India is moving. First, from Indira Gandhi time starts internal consolidation, South Asia के बाद Southeast Asia, Look West policy 2005, then you can find Act East policy considering Japan to the Australian side, and now looking forward for Africa. Look at the visits to the Africa in the past 3 years. Compare it in the entire history, you cannot find even it is not equal. I mean, now more visits to the Africa. There is a logical expansion of the Indian influence that we are getting engaged in the different part of the world. But at the time of Nehru, इसीलिए नेहरू को idealist भी कहा जाता है. It is just because he completely ignored strategic factor, he completely ignored internal power structure of the time. So you see here, by 90s, Indian relationship with the Southeast Asian country was quite limited because of economic factor, political factor and contemporary foreign policy of India. Clear? चलिए आगे देखते हैं. By 90s things started changing. By 90s things started changing, and what factors that led to that change? पहला तो economic factor ही है. India went for economic reforms. When we went for economic reforms, तो इसका impact क्या हुआ? We started looking for technology for Indian market. Started looking for investment and market for primary goods, and definitely Southeast Asia is considered to be an ideal place. You can understand, extended neighborhood of India. We are looking for technology for Indian market, investment and market from primary goods, for primary goods. And Southeast Asia was the ideal one because by 70s they went for economic reforms. Their own economy is technology export oriented economies, and we are looking forward, as they are rich, they might invest in the Indian side. Small island countries are there, and they really dependent on import of basic food items like wheat, and you can find of some other stuffs. So we started looking forward Southeast Asia as a major country. And if I ask you why Southeast Asian countries were interested in India, so even economically they find India as a very lucrative market, and gradually अगर 90 से अगर आप start करें, gradually they realize in next 10 years that India could be also a soft balancer against the Chinese side, because this 10-year, you know, that was the Indian growing profile was there. 1998 India went for nuclear blast. Apart from that, Indian economic growth was quite high during this period, and India's proactive engagement in South Asia and beyond Southeast Asia was there. So technically in this 10-year, India emerged as a emerged as a power. India emerged as a power. So Southeast Asian countries started their relationship as an economic, and they gradually moved towards what you say political and security. देखिए ये तीन चीज मैंने बताई. अब रीड एनी ऑफ द रिलेशनशिप एक्सेप्ट वियतनाम. इफ यू रीड इंडिया मलेशिया तो आपको लगेगा कि by 2000 they are just signing economic agreements, but after 2000 you'll find strategic partnership, naval exercises, that all starts from here onwards. So that is very simple, because now India gained that weight, and this was the time. ये केवल connect it, because if you see China by 90s, China was also not that assertive. China also become assertive only after 90s. This 10-year, China was gradually becoming assertive. Indian profile was growing, and Southeast Asian make a gradual shift towards the Indian side. US was already there, but they are looking for a soft balance rather than a hard balance that will clearly make trouble for them, or what I use the word overshadowed them. They do not want, and that is why Indian role gradually started expanding in the region. So if you see India and ASEAN in first 10 years, 90% of the visit and treaties are economic in nature, 90%. Then gradually you can find joint naval exercises, ARF membership of 1996. That was a political engagement related to issues, local issues, then anti-terror cooperations, then you can find anti-piracy cooperation. इस सब का timeline start होता है 98 के बाद से ही. In fact 98 नहीं कहूँगा, 2000, because by 98 these all countries ban India, put sanctions over India because of the nuclear explosion, and within 2 years all sanctions has gone. This is again surprising, a comparative study. By 1974, when we went for nuclear explosion, average sanctions over India was 9 years, and Japanese sanctions was for 15 years. And in 1998, the maximum time limit of the this sanction was just 3 years. None of the country, or 74 को हम मानते हैं, that was not much successful as 1998 was. Now, how come the entire world moved from sanctioning? मैंने वो भी example दिया था कि how come 1974 NSG was formed, London Supplier Group was formed, and now these all players are looking forward to inclusion of India in NSG. This is how, when you emerge as a power, when your role is accepted by all countries and you gradually invited to be part of that. And Southeast Asian countries are also part. And India role in Indo-Pacific region, you'll find after 2001. The way we are getting engaged, Malabar exercise को अगर आप timeline मानते हो, 2005-6 engagement with the US civil nuclear deal, then you can gradually find 2008, 2010. This was the time when we are signing strategic partner with US, Australia, Japan. These are the countries with whom we are signing. And this is how Indian engagement in Indo-Pacific region moved to the next level, that is strategic and security. Otherwise, earlier engagement was just only economic in nature. So, you will find out during this period, because of the economic reforms, India and Southeast Asia got a common economic platforms. Then second important thing you can find out, end of Cold War. So end of Cold War, that the political or ideological contradiction that existed, NAM and SEATO, that was there. So when Cold War get ended, SEATO, CENTO all have gone basically. So that ideological platform were also getting created. And the third important factor, I would say, इसको हम चाइना की लैंग्वेज में ही लिखेंगे, पीसफुल राइज ऑफ चाइना. चाइना ने यही कहा है भाई, पीसफुल राइज ऑफ चाइना. Peaceful rise of China was another factor. Peaceful rise of China was another factor that further created path for cooperation of India and Southeast Asian countries. जब आप ये लिख रहे हो, सो आई वुड से यू शुड बी फैक्चुअली गुड व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग दीज आंसर्स. राइटिंग दिस फैक्चुअली गुड का मतलब, जैसे मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूं कि इंडिया गॉट ऑब्जर्वर स्टेटस इन आसियान, then India become a dialogue partner, and finally by 2002 we become summit level partner. Summit level partner. So be factually strong and write trade data, trade data, trade data. Apart from trade data, talk about some joint business groups, joint business groups. Joint business group. बिल्कुल ऐसा है. अरे वो तो चाइना कह रहा है कि डरो मत, like because there was a consistent campaign by US and its ally कि China is an expansionist power. If there will be emergence of China, then it will expand its influence towards their neighborhood. And China was trying to say that there is a peaceful rise of China, and actually Chinese rise will help in development of their neighborhood. So they need to get engaged with China rather than maintaining difference with China. That is why they started using the word peaceful rise of China. चलिए इंडिया साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, इंडिया साउथ ईस्ट एशिया पे लिखेंगे. Despite India's geographical proximity, despite India's geographical proximity to Southeast Asia, sharing over 1600 kilometer of land boundary with Myanmar, and maritime boundaries with Myanmar, Thailand and Indonesia, comma, Southeast Asia was hardly a priority area in Indian foreign policy before 90s. ठीक है, full stop. Initiated in early part of 90s, India's lookist policy has been directed to the region through the ASEAN. ठीक है, सो इंडियन रिलेशनशिप विद देम, अपने ये बेसिक इंट्रोडक्शन के बाद यू टॉक अबाउट कि फ्रॉम 1947 टू 1990 इंडियन रिलेशनशिप with Myanmar was very much limited, and these were the factors why it was limited. Then after 90s, it is the era of proactive engagement with Southeast Asian countries. After 90s, it is the era of proactive engagement with Southeast Asian countries. So what factors that led to close association with South Asian countries? End of Cold War, economic reform, peaceful rise of China. That factors contributed in close association with Southeast Asian countries. So in initial days, what steps has been taken? This is factual information. आपने 3 reason लिखा, लेकिन आपने fact नहीं बताए, तो your answer will be partial one. So you need to write some factual information. Please write down. ASEAN accorded sectoral dialogue partner status to India. Sectoral dialogue partner status to India in 1992. Full dialogue partner 1995. Summit level partnership 2002. India was admitted to ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum. India was admitted to ARF, ASEAN Regional Forum in 1996. In 2005, India become founding member of East Asian Summit. 2006, India became a member of Asia Europe Meeting, ASEM. ठीक है. Now you can also write कि इसमें कुछ और मेजर इकोनॉमिक इनिशिएटिव हैं. India and ASEAN establish joint trade committee, joint business commission, India ASEAN Business Council, and ASEAN India joint, last one, ASEAN India Joint Management Committee. अब इसके बाद आपको एक काम करना है, you have to write a trade data of India and ASEAN, trade data of India and ASEAN, trade data of India and ASEAN. फिर आगे लिखेंगे India and ASEAN signed FTA as well as CECA, FTA as well as CECA. CECA. चलिए अब यहीं से एक चीज और समझिए, ये इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव में ये टाइम कहा जाता है LEP 1 or LEP, India's look east policy. So when we say कि what was India's look east policy, तो ये बहुत क्लियर है कि under look east policy India was looking forward to develop close economic, political, revival of history and strategic relationship with Southeast Asian nation. Economic, political, revival of history and strategic relationship with the Southeast Asian country. But in first 10 years, economic cooperation was on driver's seat. आपने जितने factual information लिखे हैं, they all are revealing that idea कि in the first 10 years, India was engaging Southeast Asian country mainly in economic terms, rather than entering into a political strategic cooperation. Even revival of the history or cultural cooperation was also limited during this period. You can find out इस समय जितनी भी treaties हैं, most of the treaty what you have written, it is economic in nature. This is also LEP 1. This is also LEP 1. And if I ask कि why India was only focused on the economic aspect rather than the political and strategic aspect, there is a two important factor. First, India went for economic reforms, so we are much into need of boosting and engaging our economy. This was one of the important reason, and the second important reason is basically China. How come China? Because China, in that country, I have explained it earlier, it has a close economic ties with Southeast Asian country, and it consistently practice influence. So getting engaged in political and strategic term might make China offensive. In the initial days, neither Southeast Asian country nor India was interested in taking any political or strategic crisis of the time. So we calmly maintained our economic relationship. In most of the visit, only economic treaty and agreements was there. So you can write कि China as a regional factor, China as a regional player was another factor for downtoning political and strategic relationship, and India was much focusing for the economic engagement with these countries. और भी factors हैं, like Southeast Asian countries was not holding much confidence over India. India was a new country in terms of playing a bigger role. How long India will sustain? This was another important factor. So technically in LEP, this was the first phase. Clear to everyone? Now by 2001 onwards, things started changing. And here you can find out we enter into the category of LEP2. इसको 2001 से start होता है LEP2 का time. So what exactly LEP2 is that? Nothing, same. Economic, political, revival of history and cultural relationship as well as strategic relationship. There are two major changes. First major changes in LEP2, India has extended its area of cooperation, that is moving from Southeast Asia to Asia Pacific. तो अब इसमें cooperation with Japan, cooperation with Australia, these all countries started getting included. Up with Japan, with Australia, our next level of relationship where we are engaging them politically and say strategically, that start only after 2001. Before that, their gradual economic engagement was there. So this is the first change. मतलब LEP और LEP1 और LEP में पहला चेंज क्या है? LEP was highly Southeast Asian centric. Your line of language will be Southeast Asian centric. ऐसा नहीं था कि it was only Southeast Asia, but Southeast Asian centric. But in LEP2, we moved beyond Southeast Asia, and India's policy was Asia Pacific centric. It is not Indo Pacific. Asia Pacific centric. LEP2 was there. And second, it was not economics on the driving seat. It was political and strategic relationship that come on the driver's seat. Come on the driver's seat. तो अब 2001 के बाद के engagement देखिए. Then first time we started signing treaty of political nature, strategic nature. We started participating in naval exercises, exchange of informations, political dialogue regarding the regional issues. That all starts only after 2001. So I guess, can you identify between LEP1 and LEP2? The area of the driver's seat are the main thrust of engagement was basically political and strategic cooperation. अब इसमें दो चार एग्जाम्पल लिख लीजिए. By 1998 हाँ LEP2 के लिए by 1998 मैं पहले भी बोल चुका हूं, ये टाइमलाइन जो होती है वो रफ टाइमलाइन होती है. इसका मतलब नहीं उसके पहले हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं. By 1998 India got opportunity to clarify its stand in ARF. In ARF. ASEAN refused to pass condemning India for its military explosion, nuclear explosion. By 2001, India and ASEAN signed Treaty of Peace and Amity. Treaty of Peace and Amity. AMITY, amity. Next one. There is a regular deployment of Indian Navy. There is a regular deployment of Indian Navy into the South China Sea since 2001 onwards. इंडिया एंड जापान, सॉरी पहले उसको लिखिए, इंडिया एंड सिंगापुर signed a strategic partnership and were engaged in number of naval exercises. India, Thailand, India, Vietnam engaged similar type of exercises. आगे लिखिएगा, India agreed to provide high-end technology weapon to Vietnam. In fact, negotiation on sale of BrahMos is going on. इसी में आगे लिखेंगे, India agreed to train Vietnamese sailor for Kilo class submarine supplied by Russians. Kilo class submarine. इंडिया इज, इसी में लिखेंगे, इंडिया इज आइंग ऑन डिफेंस मार्केट ऑफ साउथ ईस्ट एशियन कंट्रीज. अभी रिसेंटली कोई ट्राइलेटरल मैरीटाइम एक्सरसाइज हुई है, मीटिंग हुई है साउथ ईस्ट एशिया के साथ? सितंबर 2019, सिंगापुर, इंडिया, थाईलैंड, रिसेंट है एकदम. इंडिया, सिंगापुर, थाईलैंड ट्राइलेटरल मैरीटाइम एक्सरसाइज 2019. In 2016, India did host field training exercise called Force 18, comprising of 10 Southeast Asian countries. There is a consistent, full stop करके, there is a consistent discussion on security and defense of South Asian countries under AD, कैपिटल में लिखेंगे ADSOM plus and ADMM plus. India and Southeast Asia and Southeast Asia. आखिरी लाइन लिखेंगे, प्लीज राइट डाउन ASEAN has extended their consent for, इसको लाइन करेंगे, फ्री ओपन inclusive and rules based Indo-Pacific. Free, open, inclusive and rules based Indo-Pacific. Rules based Indo-Pacific. LEP 1, LEP 2. अगर आपसे कहा जाए कि फिर LEP 2 के बाद एक्ट ईस्ट क्यों? What is this एक्ट ईस्ट? क्या डिफरेंस है LEP 2 एंड एक्ट ईस्ट के बीच? Good. Act East is talking about pragmatic, action-oriented approach to Look East policy. They just changed the name of Act East. So this is more into this idea that whatever we have done during our Look East policy, it has to be materialized. It has to be materialized. And the new decisions, the new agreements must be pragmatic in nature, and which could be fulfilled. So it is action oriented, it is pragmatic. This is what we talk about Act East. This is what we talk about Act East. So in general, Indian engagement, अगर अभी मैं ऐसे कहूँ, Indian engagement with Southeast Asian countries, Indian engagement with Southeast Asian countries, Indian engagement with Southeast Asian countries are in economic terms, in political terms, as well as in strategic terms. So when you have to write the economic terms, you have trade data, you should have economic mechanism, कुछ मैंने लिखवाया भी है. When it comes to the political one, their views, I mean ARF, then their views on terrorism, drugs, support for India's NSG and UNSC. This come in the political cooperation part. When it comes to the strategic, so their partnership with India, specifically in maintaining peace, stability, security, and you can say peace, stability, security, and issue of South China Sea. यहाँ पर आप जितने नेवल एक्सरसाइज हैं, स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप्स हैं, ये सब आप लिख सकते हैं. दिस इज ऑल naval exercises, strategic partnership, other treaties you can talk about. So Indian engagement with Southeast Asian countries are very much specific. अगर मैं आपसे कहूं कि अब जो इंडियन एंगेजमेंट है उसका ग्रेटर कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या है, तो एक्चुअली वो एशिया पैसिफिक है. दैट इज एशिया पैसिफिक. इवन दे अंडरस्टैंड कि एशिया पैसिफिक इज अ major line of, sorry, Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific is a major line of engagement. What benefit are how Indian engagement with Southeast Asian countries serving Indian interest, or how or what type of interest will be served being with, what type of interest will be served being with ASEAN countries. देखिए इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट आपको समझ में आ रहा है. कल भी हमने जो बात की कि आवर इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट इज वेरी मच देयर. वी आर लुकिंग फॉर अ गुड मार्केट, वी आर लुकिंग फॉर technological cooperation with the Southeast Asian countries. Huge Indian diaspora is present in Southeast Asia. So these are the three economic lines you can take in case of Southeast Asia. Although there is a growing a trade deficit, that is the challenge of the economic cooperation, but still economic cooperation with Southeast Asian countries are consistently rising. When it comes to what strategic benefit we are going to get from Southeast Asia, so we will be in position to, I am saying we will be in position to put pressure over China to delay or slow their engagement in Indian Ocean region as well as in South Asia. It is going to delay that one, because the similar line of model we have adopted. China, South Asia, India, Southeast Asia. China, Indian Ocean, India, South China Sea. Indian presence to Japan, Indian presence to Australia. This is the similar model we have. This is not something going to lead war. This is something going to slow down what the rivalry India and China is going to face. इसका ये मतलब बिल्कुल नहीं है they are going to enter into war. That simply it will restrain China from its aggressive expansion and stance in South Asia as well as in Indian Ocean region. While writing, don't write the word like it will enhance the rivalry. You have to write in a positive way. You have to write in a positive way. It is not enhancing rivalry, it is restraining China to take a strong and offensive, aggressive stance in Indian Ocean region as well as in South Asia. देखिए, this international relations is all about the way you write. This is the more important thing. you can write the things in such a way that when I am using these words, when you express that we are a country with the peaceful objectives, we just want you to slow down your campaign against us. Now, to slowing down your campaign, actually we initiated a campaign, but rather than saying this one, if we are taking any aggressive stance, we will put it in other way. Basically, we are just trying to slow down and we are defending our interest. But what you are doing for defending your interest, the similar thing has been done by the other country. So, this is where you write, seeing at the nature of the question, change your language. The same fact, if you have to show the problem, the same fact you have to show it in some other way. There is nothing new. It is all about the interpretation, and interpretation are more or less similar one. IR में बहुत multiple interpretations नहीं होते हैं, 3 या 4 popular line होती हैं, and all interpretation are around this one. So you should be good in facts and you should be good in articulation. Then you can write, that will be enough while writing answers. Is it clear? I guess this India and ASEAN thing is clear to everyone? Yes, please. No. When it comes to the Hong Kong, like India has taken a complete isolationist approach in case of Hong Kong. We are not entering at all. Even we are not making media statements regarding the protest in Hong Kong. So maintain this line. We need not to go. When we talk about, when we talk about what was the theoretical approach to the Southeast Asian countries, what was the theoretical approach to the Southeast Asian countries, without any doubt, one of the important factor was neoliberal elements. 90s के बाद, what we are looking for, economic engagement, deep economic engagement. We are looking for deep economic institutional engagement also. When you are signing a CACA or FTA, when you are making joint business groups, is what? You are looking for creating institutions through which trade could be further extended. So, neoliberal institutionalism and neoliberal or commercial neoliberalism, you can write both commercial neoliberalism as well as neoliberal institutionalism. This is one approach to deal with the Southeast Asian countries. That is completely talking about close economic cooperation with Southeast Asian countries. Now, the second important approach you can find out, earlier one, neorealism. Neorealism in what sense? Again, China is a major factor. At the same time, US is also a factor. Don't consider that US is a friend. Just consider US is a major strategic factor for the ASEAN countries. So we have to be careful not to be completely in the US camp also. So these two powers are trying to shape a structure of Southeast Asia or a structure of South Asian politics, and according to that structure India is responding. तो अगर बहुत ध्यान से देखोगे तो आपको क्या समझ में आएगा? India's own relationship with Southeast Asian countries, India's own relationship with the Southeast Asian countries, in order to create a soft balancing against China, and at the same time to maintain distance with the US, in context of Southeast Asian. India is aware with this one. Southeast Asian countries are not willing at all to engage US in any security architecture. So India is aware of this one. So Indian engagement with the Southeast Asian country is maintaining a principal distance with the US in Southeast Asian power structure here. But when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, Indian approach is not this one. Indian approach is more or less going close to the US. But when it comes to the Southeast Asia, this is something different. So understand, in entire Indo-Pacific, Southeast Asia is just one block. East Asia is block, West Asia is block, small island countries are block. They are blocks. In dealing with Japan, US and Indian cooperation is important, that will further facilitate. But dealing with Southeast Asia, distance with US will maintain that relationship. So when we are dealing with the Southeast Asian issues, we are maintaining a principal distance with the US side. Got my point? ऐसा भी होता है एक ग्रुप में 5 लोग जिसमें 2 लोग एक दूसरे को पसंद नहीं करते, बट यू नीड टू हैव द कोऑपरेशन ऑफ बोथ टू. तो कभी कभी आप डिप्लोमेसी की तरह एक समय एक से बात करते हो, दूसरे से अलग समय पे, यू ट्राई टू अवॉइड बोथ टुगेदर. दिस इज द सेम थिंग. Just to make you understand, this is the same thing, but in greater context of Indo-Pacific, everyone is required. Everyone is required. So it is a new realistic approach where India is looking forward to fit itself at a search for a greater role in emerging power structure of Southeast Asia. And greater role is a close economic relationship. क्लोज मिलिट्री एंड डिफेंस रिलेशनशिप. इससे हम कई चीजें करने की कोशिश करें जो आपने लिखा भी है. एक तरह तो हम कह रहे हैं कि विल ट्राई टू क्रिएट अ सॉफ्ट बैलेंसिंग टू चाइना, विल इंश्योर आवर इंडिपेंडेंट रोल. इंडिपेंडेंट रोल, देखिए ये एक बड़ा चैलेंज है इंडिया के लिए कि इंडिया नीड टू मेंटेन दैट इंडिया इज नॉट कंप्लीटली इन लाइन ऑफ द यूएस. जिनको एतराज नहीं है that is fine, but those countries who has certain reservation, then India has to maintain. West Asian politics was there and now Southeast Asian politics is there. So India has to ensure it's a independent role. It's an independent role. And third, as you have written, India is looking forward for a defense market. Or Southeast Asia is the ideal place for India's market. देखिए South Asia, you have a very less space for the market because of the China has already taken over that market. Southeast Asia is the market where Southeast Asian countries are deliberately avoiding Chinese arms and ammunition and their defense engagement. But at the same time, earlier they are taking arms and ammunition from the US and European countries, and that is gradually declining and it is making space for Indian side. ये जो ब्रह्मोस को साउथ ईस्ट एशिया के लिए ही डिजाइन किया गया था. It was designed looking into the Southeast Asian countries market, and when you enter into defense market, it will serve two-way purpose. एक तो soft balancing towards China will increase. You are going to create a resistance among the Southeast Asian countries against China in low intensity warfare. You are going to create a resistance among Southeast Asian countries against China in low intensity warfare, and you will entering into a market also. So that is much beneficial. आप लोग थोड़ा सर्च करेंगे, Ministry of Defense में there is a special cell for defense market. There is a special cell for defense market. उसका नाम शायद है SDG, yes, कुछ ऐसे ही नाम है. Strategic Defense Goal something, I'm missing the name. They have created this one in Ministry of Defense, and that set every year the target of arms sale to the different countries basically. So with Southeast Asian country, this is what the Indian interest. This is what the Indian interest. But when it come to Indo-Pacific, देखिए और भी छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं आपको समझने के लिए, explanation करने के लिए. Like US is holding a little bit aggressive stance. Japan is more or less with the US stand. India is looking forward for a little bit a slower pace of Indo-Pacific politics and looking more into not to be caught in crossfire. That is true कि भाई US China का crossfire हो गया, हम सब एक तरह से बाहर हो गए उसमें. So India is looking forward कि I should always remain as a player, and for this one you need to regulate the pace of interaction and the pace of engagement, and in order to do so you need to work as a brake against the US side. Otherwise US China होने का क्या है, प्रॉब्लम हो रही है, खत्म करो. So rather than going with this approach, we need to make a break, and it will help to consolidate our relationship with the Southeast Asian countries. It will help our relationship to consolidate with the Southeast Asian countries. It will create a greater role for India, for political as well as strategic one. So that is why we have a relatively independent role in Southeast Asia if you compare with the US side. So when you read the article, तो अगर आपने पढ़ा कि इफ इंडिया मेड सम स्टेटमेंट अगेंस्ट द यूएस इन इंडो पैसिफिक, सो डोंट एनालाइज इट इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ इंडो पैसिफिक पॉलिटिक्स, ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड इन कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ साउथ ईस्ट एशिया, तब आपको समझ में आएगा कि व्हाई इंडिया इज टेकिंग एंटी यूएस स्टैंड इन सर्टेन स्टांसेस. Then you will realize it, okay, sometimes we praise China also, sometimes we accuse US also. This is all our strategy to create a space for us not to be identified completely with US and warn US, don't take us for granted. Just understand that India is an independent player. This is what we are looking for when it comes to the Southeast Asian politics. I guess neoliberal model, we have a neo-realist model. Both model we apply when we deal with the Southeast Asian countries. Our objectives are economic, political and strategic. Our main collaborators are Japan, US and Southeast Asia. Although in economic sense China is also our collaborator, because हम केवल एक ही टूल का इस्तेमाल नहीं कर रहे हैं. Okay, you see what the other tool we are using here to remain intact in Southeast Asian politics. Apart from that, close India and Japan ties. तो आप India and Japan ties को जितना strong करोगे, that Japan तो चाहता ही है, I have explained it earlier, self-reliance and the complete dependency of the US should be well managed. So Japan will give a warm response to the Indian side. So if this relationship becomes strong, you are going to get a bigger role there. This is one way. And at the same time, if you consolidate your relationship with China, specifically in economic aspect of politics, whether related to the climate change, related to the reforms in international financial institutions, or issue related to trade politics, jitna improve karoge, say like discussion in RCEP going on, this is a very important factor, because it will establish a very good infrastructure to get connected with Southeast Asia basically. That is all going to help India to create a bigger step. और ये सब symbols हैं कि we are not following US blindly. We are looking forward for our own independent role. So whenever you find examples of India-China cooperation, when you find joint statement related to multipolar world, when you find a joint statement that parties must not be engaged in war or conflict in South China Sea, ये सारा anti-US stance नहीं है. That is a pro-China and pro-Southeast Asian stance in order to create a space against the US or to maintain one. Understand the Indian position in entire Indo-Pacific region. We have allies, Japan, US and Southeast Asia, but they all are not allies in themselves. So we need to deal with them separately. We need to be with the Chinese side, not allow to US to use us completely as per their own strategies. ये बहुत important factor, otherwise we will just become a tool and US is going to utilize us completely. So you need to make a difference, and that is why Indian engagement in that entire area is a very challenging. Like it's not just flat one, you get engaged with everyone. I guess this point is clear. Last thing, if I ask, what are the major difficulties India is facing in Southeast Asia? तो इसको सबसे पहले आप infrastructural term में देखेंगे. One of the major issue what we find here is basically infrastructure or connectivity with the Southeast Asia. Infrastructure or connectivity with the Southeast Asian countries. With the Southeast Asian country. इसमें बताएंगे Myanmar is the only land connectivity. Myanmar is the only land connectivity where infrastructure is very poor. Where infrastructure is very poor. Fine. Second one, existing infrastructural projects are getting delayed. जैसे कालादान मल्टीनोडल प्रोजेक्ट, ट्राइलेटरल हाईवे इंडिया, म्यांमार एंड थाईलैंड, ट्राइलेटरल हाईवे। इसी में आगे लिखेंगे प्रॉब्लम ऑफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, नेक्स्ट पॉइंट, प्रॉब्लम ऑफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर of India's northeastern region, and transnational terrorist activities, तो ये जो ट्रांसनेशनल टेररिस्ट एक्टिविटी में you can movement of Ulfa is there, then Arkan army is there, NSCN there. NSCN, Arkan army and Ulfa. बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, they are transnational, they have a movement. Problem of drug trafficking in the region. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखेंगे लैक ऑफ मैरीटाइम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन बे ऑफ बंगाल रीजन, स्पेसिफिकली चिटगांव पोर्ट एंड सितवे पोर्ट। Sitwe, it's in Myanmar. Chittagaon port and Sitwe port. No, Sitwe port is under Myanmar. Chittagaon port is with the Bangladesh. No, control नहीं China का है, but these ports are not advanced port कि in one time you can deploy 50 ships or big infrastructure. They are not holding that, but so it is because of that our connectivity with the entire Southeast Asian country is under strain. This is one of the major problem for India. Without improving, in Bangladesh also we'll read about that, we are trying to develop rail linkages, road linkages as well as maritime linkages, so we can access Bangladesh, and if we have a good infrastructure, then via Myanmar we can access the Southeast Asian countries. This access, or you can say maritime as well as land infrastructure, is very poor in the entire region and we are not in position to access. थोड़ा आप अपने आप को फैक्चुअली इंप्रूव करेंगे इफ यू कैन राइट नेम ऑफ मोर प्रोजेक्ट, जैसे BCIM is also project, Mekong Ganga cooperation is project for this. So if you find more projects that is related to the infrastructure in that particular area, you will write it there. These projects are going on, what are the major problems of these projects. This is one major problem in India's look east policy or act east policy. या आप उस तरह से भी लिख सकते हैं कि व्हाट आर द मेजर प्रॉब्लम, दिस इज वन ऑफ द मेजर प्रॉब्लम विद अस. इसको दो पार्ट में डिवाइड कर लेंगे, वन इज इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, अदर इज अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ लॉ एंड ऑर्डर, ट्रांस national terrorist and drug cartels operating in that particular area, they are creating a major trouble. Then you can talk about next one, इसके अलावा जो और इश्यूज हैं वो इशू हैं limited political cooperation with Myanmar as well as with Bangladesh, lack of infrastructure in Bay of Bengal, underutilization of Kolkata port, and old business linkages. आगे इसी में लिखेंगे as business network of chetties, business network of chetties. Chetties, ये साउथ ईस्ट एशिया में is a very influential. They all belong to the Indian side and they have a very good network over there. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की जो अप्रोच है बहुत ही ब्यूरोक्रेटिक और ऑफिशियल है. वी डोंट एंगेज द नॉन ऑफिशियल स्ट्रक्चर्स, अदरवाइज दे हैव अ वेरी गुड होल्ड देयर. चलिए, these are the major problems related to Southeast Asia. You can further talk about कि Indo-Pacific politics is also a limitation for India's engagement with Southeast Asia. China is a factor, US is a factor. You can talk about this all putting limitation for India's close engagement with the Southeast Asian countries. जैसे कि रूल बेस, उसमें आपने लिखा एक वर्ड रूल बेस. दिस रूल बेस is the new word added by Southeast Asian countries. G20 summit हुआ, उसके बाद आसियान का अपना एक समिट हुआ and they released the official statement regarding Indo-Pacific position and South China Sea. They says कि we want open, but they use two words, inclusive. So it should not be the project of US, Japan and Australia, India. It should be Southeast Asia. It is the center of the Southeast Asian issues. And the second, it should be rule based. Rule is not only for China, rule is for everyone. So this एक ORF पे एक document पढ़ा है इस release को लेके. Do read that. That document is very good. That is talking about कि what is take of Southeast Asian countries in growing situation of Asia Pacific, sorry Indo-Pacific. देखिए ये आपके ऑप्शनल से ज़्यादा GS के लिए ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है कि what is the take of Southeast Asian countries on Indo-Pacific. अगर आप ढूंढेंगे तो ORF पे मिल जाएगा आपको. चलिए, we are done with the Southeast Asia. हम ब्रेक लेते हैं, ब्रेक के बाद विल कंटिन्यू. रशिया करूंगा मैं स्टार्ट. So okay, India-Russia relationship. So before I start, let me know how you perceive India-Russia relationship. क्या लगता है, कौन है ये लोग? What? What is it? Okay. When we talk about India-Russia relationship, so you'll find out India and Russia had good relationship even before 1947. Now, there are two important factors. First, USSR perceived specifically after 1970. USSR perceived British is an imperial power because in 1917 there was a Russian revolution. Before that, USSR itself was a imperial power. But after the revolution, USSR considered India is a colony and which is victim of West or British imperialism, and supported Indian independence and criticized British exploitation of India. This is one of the important factors. There was a visit of Jawaharlal Nehru to USSR in 1927. There was a visit of Jawaharlal Nehru to USSR in 1927. He was highly impressed with socialist economic model. Highly impressed with socialist economic model and were more into holding a similar type of economy in India. Now, apart from that, Stalin made an official announcement recognizing India's independence even before independence. I repeat my point. Stalin make an official statement and recognized India and recognized India's independence before independence. So you can all be factors, but in general, in pre-independent era, India and Russia the start was good. It was quite friendly start. Between India and Russia during this period. From 1947 up to 1962. Again, India-Russia relationship was definitely good, and it was Russians supplying arms, it was Russians supplying technology, even energy, helping in establishing industries, that all help was coming from the Russian side. But in 1962 war, 1962 war, Russia did not agree to transfer arms. Although after 1962, they agreed to supply MiG, and that was a big thing because they denied to supply MiG to China. They denied to supply MiG to China, but later on they agreed to supply MiG to Indian side. But in 1962 war, there was not much help from the Russian side. There was not much help from the Russian side. But at the same time, Russia also blocked or used its veto in case of JNK as well as in case of Goa also. In case of Goa, 1961. In case of Goa in 1961, you can find out Russians helped to block, because in case of Goa, when India has taken a military step, it was a USA proposed to retaliate, consider it as a disturbing international peace, and proposed to take action against India side against India in case of Goa. मतलब उनका प्लान ये था there should be a military retaliation come from the UN side, but in UN security it was blocked by Russians. It was blocked by Russians, and you can find Goa was easily liberated. So till 1962 you can find out the relationship was good. मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि from 1962 to 1971 relationship was declined, but it was just only one incident. But after that, 1971 is considered to be starting of a golden era of India-Russia relationship, considered to be a starting of a golden era of relationship between India and Russia, because of treaty of peace and friendship. Because of treaty of peace and friendship that helped India in making Bangladesh independent, helped India in Bangladesh war, and India, you can say, restructured what you say South Asian order. India restructured South Asian order and emerged at the center of the power, and emerged at the center of the power. You will find out after the Bangladesh war, India became the center of South Asia. It immensely increased India's reputation at the global level. इसके बारे में थोड़ा और बता रहा हूँ. It is also considered as diplomatic victory of India. Diplomatic victory of India. It is also considered as diplomatic victory of India over United States of America as well as China. So at the global level also, it immensely increased Indian position. But after 1971, major issue started arising with the US side. You can find out US has taken a complete pro-Pakistan and anti-Indian stand. Pro-Pakistan and anti-Indian stand. यहाँ दो तीन लाइनें और लिखेंगे. After that treaty, question has been raised over India's leadership of NAM. Question has been raised over India's leadership of NAM. इसी में ऐड कर रहे हैं. NAM has criticized Indian stand ऐसे लिखिए, NAM countries have criticized Indian stand on Afghanistan in 1979. In 1979. Fine. So, you will find out there was clear cut demarcation, I would say in other way. India successfully managed US and Russia together till 1971. Both continue to help India in economic ways as well as military ways. In 1962 war, it was Americans, Britishers agreed to supply arms and ammunition to the Indian side. In fact, it was America dispatched its warship against the China, which led to unilateral announcement of what you say ceasefire basically. So, India was managing both of the country while taking its stand of NAM. Look, by taking stand of NAM, India did not you can say take side, and these all countries, I mean US and Russia, believe that there is a space for maneuvering to Indian side. So, they all look forward that India will continue to support, or India will support their position on the different international issues, and India entered into the bargain for their economic help or technological help, and that worked successful during this period. But most of the scholars believe that 1971 was a watershed, watershed line. The reason being is that by signing this treaty of peace and friendship, which seems to be theoretically non-military treaty, but somewhere it recognized India as an ally of the Russians, and it is because of that India completely lost US favors or US help to the Indian side. Like earlier US imposed over us restriction under special 301 and 302, which has been further intensified later on. US declined to provide food grains to Indian side, declined to provide super technologies like supercomputers, even put pressure over Russians in 90s for the cryogenics, consistently put create pressure against India for signing NPT. London Supplier Group 1974 has been created to put pressure over the Indian side, and there was a sanctions over India for almost 10 to 15 years by US and its allies after 1974. So, you can find out a kind of strong reaction is coming from the US and its ally sides after 1971 when India has signed this treaty. Diplomatically, India tried to emphasize that this treaty is non-military nature treaty, and technically the language of the treaty is non-military, but the way USSR extended its support in 1971 war and later on supply of arms and ammunition. If I will give you a data, then a general data, 70 to 85% of the platforms used by Indian military, Air Force or Navy, that is all provided by the Russians. So, almost everything was Russian. So, it seems to be, or Cold War period mein bhi kya tha, कि those who were military allies, even they are using this much of the weapon of the other country. Very interesting, India was not in position to pay to Russia for this defense. Still Russia agreed to supply arms and ammunition, and it has taken a huge payment in Indian currency, that is in rupees. They have taken, it is one of the major issue between India and Russia. Russians are saying कि अब तो dollar में बदल दो इसको, but actually they have taken payment in Indian currency basically. So, point was कि this all reflects कि why a country is helping this much until unless they are their military allies. So, informally it was accepted that the Russians are India's military ally, and resultant you can find out, the resultant was that the US and its allies are completely turned against the Indian side. Extensive support to Pakistan, opposition of India for NPT, this London Supplier Group as I asked. So, lot of steps has been taken by the US and its allies against the Indian side, but still after 1971 to till 1990 you can find out era of, इसी को हम कहते हैं era of golden relationship between India and Russia, and still India managed its relationship with the rest of the world. 1990 is considered to be a major shift, the era or year of shift between India and Russian relationship. Now, the first shift was because of the economic reforms. Because of the economic reforms, India was looking forward to get engaged with Western economies. On the other hand, Russian economy was a closed economy, and by 90s it was completely demolished and it was rescued by even Western economy. It destroyed close economic cooperation of India and Russia. एक इशू और है, ये आपको लिखने में बाद में काम आएगा, कि India Russia economic relationship was not market oriented. It was government sponsored economic relationship was there. It was not like the private player of Indian market and private player of Russians, they are cooperating. More or less it was government sponsored, relationship. The resultant was that when Russia get disintegrated, India and Russia economic relationship was scaled down and it only remained confined to the defense relationship and limited energy relationship. Defense relationship and limited energy relationship. So, you can find out this economic reforms made it essential for India to develop close economic linkages to the West. अब इसका रिजल्ट आपको दिखता है कि आफ्टर 90 इंडिया यूएसए रिलेशनशिप, इकोनॉमिक्स की बात कर रहा हूं, इंडिया यूएस economic relationship, India US economic relationship, India Southeast Asia, they all were in the US club, India Southeast Asia economic relationship, India, Japan and European Union, you can find out that was growing immensely. On the other hand, with the Russian side, India's economic relationship was on decline. और यहाँ पे लिख सकते हो because of the nature of economic cooperation, with Russia before 90s. चलिए, then the second important thing which has completely changed, it was end of the Cold War. After 90s, end of Cold War. Now, end of Cold War led to establishment of, rather than using the word US hegemony, you can talk about it was a unipolar word. It was a unipolar word dominated by USA. Second important factor you can find out, there was rise of China. And engagement of China in Indian Ocean as well as in South Asia. There was a rise of China and its engagement in Indian Ocean region as well as South Asia. इसका मतलब क्या हो रहा है कि इसको हम कैसे समझ रहे हैं इसको? This is something, there was a change in global structure. It was global political structure is changing. Now see, before 90s, there was the two poles, one was US and Russia. So in this position, India positioned itself close to the Russian without entering into a military ties, fine. But after 90s, there a complete transformation or change in the global power structure. And in this global power structure, there is a unipolar world dominated by United States of America. It is not the similar world, it is not the similar world. And the second thing what happened, there was a rise of China. And the third important, ये मैं थोड़ा reason wise दिखा रहा हूँ, and the third important thing you can find out there are structural changes in West Asian politics. Now it is because of this global structural changes, it is because of global structural changes, because of global structural changes and India's quest for greater role in Asia as well as at global level. India's quest for greater role in Asia and at the global level made India close to US, Israel and Japan. Fine. So अगर मैं ऐसा कहूँ आपसे कि there is a decline in India and Russia relationship, तो इसको दो तरह से कैसे देखना है? If you have to write it कि yes there is a decline, so you can show there is a decline in terms of purchasing of arms and ammunition and in terms of their political relationship and security visions, because in both of the cases India is much closer to the US side rather than the Russian side. India's import of arms and ammunition has immensely rise with the Israeli side. So that reflects an economic aspect. We have already explained that there is a decline of in economic relationship between India and Russia. लेकिन अगर आपको ये बताना है, जो लास्ट टू लास्ट ईयर का क्वेश्चन था, दैट वाज अ वेरी नाइस क्वेश्चन. दिस क्वेश्चन सेज कि प्रॉब्लम बिटवीन इंडिया एंड रशिया इज मोर ऑफ परसेप्शन रादर देन रियलिटीज. This question has been asked by UPSC. Problem and challenges of India and Russia relationship was more of perception rather than realities. So here you have to show the same thing, same data, but in a different way. You can talk about कि economic relationship which was completely gone because of the disintegration of Russia has taken you can say new path, and now there is a market oriented relationship between India and Russia. Give 2-3 example. Come for the second point. Indian import of arms and ammunition from the Russia side has been increased. देखिए फर्क है. When you are saying it has been increased, 100% it has been increased in terms of what the payment we do or the entire business we do. In terms of percentage, it has drastically reduced because we started purchasing from the other country. But when it comes to monetary term, it has been significantly increased. कुछ ऐतराज है? नहीं बोल लो. हाँ तो आपको इसमें क्या करना क्या होता है? यही करना ही होता है. This is all about this one. You just simply say the total, I mean, it has been increased. In fact, you can simply put forward this one, even because even after the Katsa, India agreed to take S-400 from the Russian side. India has agreed to take from the Russian side. So again, our defense relationship is continued. In 2000, in 2008, India and Russia has signed a strategic partnership, which was later on elevated to a special privileged strategic relationship. So actually, the relationship between India and Russia is consistently on rise rather than on decline. It is merely perception. It is merely perception. It is just because it is not declining. फिर second line आप लेंगे कि no, there are certain issues. So there are certain realities in that one. तो जो पहला point आपने लिखा था कि दो so लेकिन again your writing style will be changed. Before 90s, Russia was one of the major arms and ammunition supplier to the Indian side. Now India has diversified its defense purchases, which might create tension between India and Russia. Look again, एकदम सीधा नहीं बोल देना है कि this is going to create a challenge for. Just talk about it might become a tension. हाँ ये है, ये second इसका example है. इसमें दो एग्जाम्पल हैं, एक रशिया भी है और एक चाइना भी है, वेर यू कैन टॉक अबाउट द सेकेंड. रशिया इज अंडरमाइनिंग इंडियन कंसर्न्स ऑफ सप्लाइंग आर्म्स एंड एमुनेशन टू पाकिस्तान. इट इज अ कंसर्न फॉर द इंडियन साइड. रशिया इज नॉट कंप्लीटली एंडोर्सिंग इंडियन पोजीशन ऑन terror and terror infrastructure in South Asia particularly. Similarly, you can add on that there is a slight change in Russian support to India in UNSC too. So these 4 or 5 points you can talk about. So these are the real problems, but still cooperation between India and Russia is increasing rather than decreasing. So we'll talk about, it seems to be कि most of the problems are basically, और उसके बाद की जो punchline है वही one old friend is better than 2 new friends. You can write this one and you can finish your answer ki okay, still Russia is a very important country for our friend for the Indian side. देखिए, in international relations, whatever they are asking, always try to search both of the part. Because मैंने पहले ही बोला है कि now we are living in a globalized world where countries are enter into the era of strategic partnership. ये स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप पहले नहीं होती थी, पहले केवल पार्टनरशिप होती थी. इन कोल्ड वॉर पीरियड इट वाज अ क्लियर ग्रुपिंग, बट द स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप स्टार्ट्स लेटर ऑन where the convergence of interest started varying. With a single country there are conflict, there are cooperation. So now we started becoming strategic partners. So your line of argument ki yes, Pakistan government is supporting terrorism. So again I would say कि no. The same thing. Again, पाकिस्तान वाले केस में वैसे मैंने अभी पढ़ाया नहीं आपको, but still you can talk about कि पाकिस्तानी government is very correct. Pakistani government is not able to handle the terrorist infrastructure that is run by the different fundamental groups inside because of the internal political constraints. So, government side nahi, we are just diluting a absolute statement. देखिए की इसका ये है कि IR में absolute statement नहीं होते. हाँ, जैसे कोई भी कुछ करता है तो there are certain reasons. जैसे उर्दू के शेर आप देखेंगे तो उसमें कुछ न कुछ कारण होता है. So it is similar thing in IR. Basically you will find out there are some reasons why things are happening. नहीं हम ना टेररिस्ट के फेवर में कहाँ लिख रहे हैं. किसके साथ? हाँ अभी I'll come to that part. I'm going to that. Definitely without theoretical frame, our experts are holding this vision. They cannot just deal directly on the basis of the primary element. Putin has said India is a very good friend, so we'll accept it. We know why he's saying. We need to understand. और जहाँ समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, completely follow what international theory says. If you are unable to understand, then follow कि realism है, मगर कोई आपको बहुत सही लग रहा है कि his good friend seems to be there will be no harm, but always think in IR terms कि नहीं गड़बड़ हो सकता है, मे बी आई एम नॉट एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई राइट नाउ। एंड अगर पड़ोसी है तो 100%, फिर तो अर्थशास्त्र भी आ जाता है वहां पे। The theories always give you this vision कि maybe you are not in position, but what will be the direction? What will be the direction? You can take cautious approach. Is giving the same thing. Like if a country which is much closer to the Chinese side, closer in the sense geographically, so direction is always there. He has an ample of scope of the friendship with the country. If there is a huge difference of power between China and the other country, there is a space. Maybe at that time both are sharing very good relationship. Again, answer is India, Bangladesh. India set free Bangladesh, or you can say liberated Bangladesh, helped like anything. But look at the time frame how things has been changed. Every state ultimately or at the end behave like a state. Before that it might be friend, before that it might be neighbor, but the ultimate identity is the identity of a independent state. It is bound to behave in a similar way. Let's finish this one. So you will find out, आपको क्या लिखना है कि it is the global structural changes, ध्यान सुनिए, it is the global structural changes that transformed the nature of India and Russia relationship. It changed the nature of India and Russia relationship. Still India and Russia shares convergence of the interest, but at the same time in newfound role Indian interests are more aligned with the US and Israel side. I am not denying this part कि there is no relationship with Russia in global, तो आपने पूरी जिम्मेदारी किसको दे दी? Global power structural changes. Neorealism क्या कहता है? Whatever we think, whatever state think doesn't matter at all. It is the international structure that shapes the behavior of a country. We are the same, Russians are the same, we are indebted what Russians did before 90s, but now we cannot do anything because realities are saying to be much closer to the US side and Israeli side, because they are going to help in protecting our interest in Asian region or Indo-Pacific region rather than the Russian side. Russians can definitely help us or can align us in Central Asia, will go along with the Russians. But when it comes to the Africa, when it comes to the Indian Ocean, when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, our alignment with the US side, with the Japanese side, with the Australian side are more relevant than the Russian side. So here what we will talk about, ki there is a complete transformation in a global power structure. We endorse the old friendship, we endorse a good faith over each other, we endorse our good cultural relationship, that all we do. But global power structures has completely transformed and in the newfound role. पहले India was South Asian power. Indira Gandhi time, Russians was very important, but now India is not a South Asian power. India is becoming transitionally global power. So definitely in this power structure, new alignments are required. That's true, it is applicable for everyone, isn't it? When you are studying in school, different friends, college, different friends. Once you become IAS or IPS officers, different friends. Everything gets changed. When you are a regional power, different friends. When you are just a state, abhi Nepal or Bhutan, they have their friends. These things change. That is the law. So this is something is happening. So देखो, आपको ना बहुत tactically इसको handle करना है. If they ask about is the trouble going between India and Russia, if they talk about there is a decline of India-Russia relationship, you need to handle it technically. What you have to say that there is no absolute decline between India and Russian relationship. Because of the global structural changes, Indian alignment with the new powers are there, considering India's new role beyond the South Asia or in Asia or Indo-Pacific region or at the global level. Our relationship with the Russians are intact as 4-5 fact लिख दीजिए. We have signed a strategic partnership 2000. Then it elevated up to the privileged strategic partner. Still Russia is the highest defense partner of the Indian side. Against the Katsa we went for purchasing of S-400. You just write 4 or 5 facts and show that look, still we are very good friends. अपनी नॉर्मल जिंदगी में भी जो भूलने लगता है उसको वही सब याद दिलाते हैं कि look, this is what we did. The same thing. So we just make them, this is what there, these facts are speaking itself. So actually the relationship with the Russians are remain intact, and it is the new structural changes, it is new found role of India that force India to hold new alignment that is more with the US, Japan in context of Indo-Pacific region. That doesn't mean that India Russia is on decline. That doesn't mean India Russia is decline. और elevation पे चले जाइए कि like under REC, Russia, India and China are aligning to discuss about the major regional and global issues are there. There is also a line that we are aligning our interest with the Russian side. So actually there is no decline. There is a change circumstances in which new or other alignments are there, but it is not the departure from the old allies. Is it clear? That will be the line. Don't write कि yes there is a decline between India and Russia. अगर वो बोलते हैं कि even in Russia remain a close ally of the Indian side, तो फिर आप उल्टा लिखेंगे. Then you will talk about कि yes, then you will write कि yes, Russia is a close ally of the Indian side, but again there are certain problems rising between India and Russia using like Pakistan factor, China factor. Then you talk about in new global politics, Japanese and Americans are more aligned to the Indian, serving the Indian interest in Indian Ocean region or Indo-Pacific region. So what we can say, being a close ally, but now India has more allies than that. So हम उसकी बात को भी दो तरह से कह रहे हैं, and that is what the reality is. We are actually writing the reality, we are just articulating our answers the way they are asking. In this, whatever the argument you are giving, you must have fact to back that. मैं बार बार ये बोल रहा हूँ, without fact your marks won't be good. You need to write about that you can say arguments with the fact. और केवल fact भी कोई मतलब नहीं होता है. I have seen lot of notes, lot of books people purchase, उसमें सिर्फ fact ही fact दिया रहता है. This visit was there, this visit was there, this deal was there, this visit was there. इतना visit और deal याद नहीं करना है. मतलब दो चार चीजें पता होनी चाहिए. वो नॉर्मली आपको पढ़ते वक्त आपको वैसे ही याद होती हैं when you read newspaper. Just टाइम पर याद आ जाए, ये एक बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट है. This is a very important fact that you just remember at the time of writing. चले.
ये जो गवर्नमेंट स्पॉन्सर्ड इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन था
हाँ.
और डिसइंटीग्रेशन ऑफ यूएसएसआर, ये दोनों कैसे लिंक्ड है इकोनॉमिक कोऑपरेशन कम होने के?
देखिए, ओके, उसकी वजह ये है कि by 90s, by before 90s, Indian economy was a closed economy, and we are getting lot of businesses from the Russian side because the all bid was government sponsored bid. If the Indian companies are working in the Russia, because it is the Russian government allotted that bid, it was not an open market bid, it was a closed market bid. So it was purely dependent on the government. After 90s, what happened? There was a disintegration of the Russia, and Russian economic itself got changed, and it was the Western countries that is coming for the rescue of the Russian economies, and it was more privatized. Once it became a privatized, then except the old projects, no new projects has been given to any of the Indian countries, Indian companies. And Indian companies are also started facing what we say a global competition that was earlier missing. So we completely lost our economic space in Russia. So the private business which has to be thrive, it is not there. So इसको देखते हैं. With the American side, it was just opposite. How come after 90s, America emerged as a largest trading partner of India? जबकि 90s के पहले तो बिल्कुल उल्टी स्थिति थी. I mean, India and American relationship was not good. The reason is very different, because before 90s, India and American relationship was pure private economic or market oriented relationship. The companies which was specifically textile companies that is operating, our technology company that is operating in America, it was purely based on the global competitive standards. So, even when we went for the economic reforms, it further helped those companies to consolidate their position. So, India-America relationship, economic relationship has further increased. But with the Russian side, which was very much managed, planned and controlled, it get declined, because we both enter into the arena of the global competition. This is one of the reasons. और कुछ पूछना आपको? यही जानना चाह रहे थे ना आप? So, this is one of the important reason of this relationship. No. So, here you will find out that after end of the Cold War, and rise of America as a unipolar world, rise of China and its activity or its role in Indian Ocean region and South Asia, it completely changed the global power structure. Even structure has been changed in West Asia, and then you can find out India was also looking forward a greater role in Asia as well as at the global level. Because of these changes, Indian relationship with Russia has been redefined. हम यहाँ ये नहीं कह रहे हैं कि रशिया डिक्लाइंड, वी आर सेइंग इट इज रीडिफाइंड, एंड यू कैन राइट आउट इंडिया एंड रशिया रिलेशनशिप गेट कंसोलिडेटेड. रशिया एंड इंडिया रिलेशनशिप गेट कंसोलिडेटेड. मैं कुछ फैक्ट्स बता रहा हूँ, लिखेंगे आप. In 2000, there was a declaration of India-Russia strategic partnership. In 2010, it was elevated to the level of a special and privileged, strategic partnership. Next one. This relationship acquired a qualitatively new character with enhanced level of cooperation, in security, trade, defense, science and technology, and culture. By 2017, India-Russia energy cooperation has reached to a new level as SR oil refinery, SR oil refinery and Vadinar, VADINAR, port, Vadinar, VADINAR, Vadinar port गुजरात में, and Vadinar port was acquired in a 12.9 billion deal. $12.9 billion deal. Next one, civil nuclear cooperation. Civil nuclear cooperation has further increased as a nuclear reactor. कहाँ कहाँ पर? इंडिया में कहाँ पर? नहीं अभी अभी कुंडाकुलम, और एक बांग्लादेश में रूपनगर, आई गेस रूपनगर प्लांट, रूपपुर. This this is something like India and Russia are, I mean Russians are, you can say, establishing a nuclear plant in India, and India and Russia are jointly helping to install a nuclear plant in Bangladesh. In 2016, both have adopted a joint statement, डबल इन्वर्टेड कॉमा लिखेंगे, पार्टनरशिप फॉर ग्लोबल पीस एंड स्टेबिलिटी, पार्टनरशिप फॉर ग्लोबल पीस एंड स्टेबिलिटी, तो वेन एवर यू राइट अबाउट इंडिया एंड रशिया रिलेशनशिप, तो इंडिया रशिया रिलेशनशिप की जो डायनामिक्स है, अगर इकोनॉमिक सेक्शंस पे बात करें तो वी आर शेयरिंग वेरी गुड रिलेशनशिप विद द रशियन साइड. ये आप इकोनॉमिक फ्रंट पे दिखाएंगे. इकोनॉमिक फ्रंट में एनर्जी, दैट इज अ कोर एरिया ऑफ कोऑपरेशन, एनर्जी. देन defense purchase, this is an other important area of cooperation with the Russian side. ये economic aspect को है, that shows. When it come to this strategic, तो हमारे पास बताने के लिए जो दो major statements हैं, like strategic relationship and announcement of 2010, as well as their joint statement of peace and stability. So you have to show India and Russia relationship is quite good relationship what they are sharing. Major constraint क्या है? What are the major constraint between India and Russia relationship? Major constraint between India and Russia relationship. Point 1. Economic relationship is not that much diversified. There is ample of space in cooperation in area of coal, fertilizers, rare earth metals, rare earth metals, trade and investment. Next. The second important strain in time, डिफेंस टाइज में पहला है ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल सिस्टम. ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल सिस्टम is not marketed yet because of the differences. Not marketed yet because of the differences. Next one. Russians are showing concern. Russians are showing concerns regarding India's defense purchase, increasing defense purchase from Israel and US. इसी में आगे लिखेंगे. हाँ, काटसा. Next one, Katsa is making impact. Katsa is making impact on India and Russian defense relationship. Full stop. There was a delay and payment issue. Is next one. There was a delay and payment issue regarding aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya. Aircraft carrier INS Vikramaditya. INS Vikramaditya. Earlier it was known as Gorsko. Okay. Next, India is worried about Russian supply of arms and ammunition to Pakistan. फुल स्टॉप करके इसी में कंटिन्यू लिखेंगे. इंडिया बिलीव्ड दैट Russians are undermining Indian concern in Indian Ocean region and South Asia regarding Russian military regarding newly emerged security design bracket में लिखेंगे China, newly emerged security design, comma, maritime piracy and terrorism. आगे लिखेंगे growing China Russia relationship, specifically in the Indo-Pacific region, major concern for India. अच्छा, ये वाला जो पार्ट है कि हाउ यू सी रशिया चाइना रिलेशनशिप एंड हाउ चाइना इज ट्राइंग टू बैलेंस इंडिया एंड रशियन रिलेशनशिप along with the line of India China relationship. This is a very important fact. See, yes. Look, ऐसे issues में Russians has gradually shift. What earlier they are supporting Indian positions, and later on they have mild their tone rather than extending support to China or Pakistan. They started, the reduction is like it is that should be resolved through bilateral talks. So they are not taking overtone or extending their support to the Indian position basically. Now, very interesting fact, okay, how you perceive Russia-China relationship. How we perceive Russia-China relationship. अब दो चीज देखिए. Russia is also trying to revive its old role or old glory. Russia is also trying to revive its old role or old glory. But militarily, Russians are capable. They have a limitation in economic terms. At the same time, they lost their diplomatic power. They lost their diplomatic power. Now, when we talk about diplomatic power, so actually the initiative of engagement at the global level, initiative of engagement at the global level, it starts with your diplomatic power. Matlab, you just mobilize country to take your stand what you think. You try to negotiate with them, you try to convince them. When it happens between the Prime Minister or head of the state, what we say, it is high politics. It is known as high politics. When, so actually earlier all the major powers were engaged in high politics. When Cold War issue was or anything happening in any part of the world, so American, Russian, they started discussing. In post Cold War era, the Russians say is consistently on decline. They are more engaged in their own problems rather than taking stand. तो हम इसको यही कहते हैं, their diplomatic power has drastically reduced. Now they are not get engaged in many of the issues, and even their share has been significantly reduced. अब problem ये है कि what Russians are looking from the Chinese side. So most of the scholar hold this belief कि Russians are trying to get aligned with China. Russians are trying to get aligned with China only against US centric order. US centric order. But as usual, things come in the packages. So similarly, China is trying to utilize Russian sides to downtone or to get engaged against India, and to promote its ties with Pakistan. देखिए इसमें again a very good article that says कि if Russians will be given this role, it will ultimately undermine Chinese only. अगर बड़ा काम Russians करेंगे तो it will undermine the Chinese diplomatic power basically. So alignment is fine. China is agreeing to alignment. But when it comes to kill the tiger, China will handle. But when you are fighting with the wolves, so it's better Russia should handle basically. Now train them. This is what Chinese are looking forward. Actually, ये language उसी article की थी basically. They're talking in that sense. They're talking in that sense कि this alignment for the Russians are just to get the old glory. They can align and they can try to transform or change the US centric order, specifically in Indo-Pacific region. So it is the Chinese who are challenging. If the Russians will ally and maybe overtone, then there is a possibility that Russia can regain its older place. देखिए एक ही चीज है कि it's not something like Russia become militarily weak. It's not like that. And again, there's not going to be war, but you should have capacity to help someone in military as well as in economic terms. It should be in military and economic terms. This is one of the major issue. This is one of the major issue. So Russians are looking forward for that particular goal by aligning with the Chinese side, and they do not want actually to be, Russia is actually does not want directly to be engaged against the Indian side. In fact, Russians are looking this design. Russians are looking to utilize India specifically against China wherever the Russian influence are there, specifically in politics of Central Asia. So now the complexity you can understand, everyone is utilizing everyone, looking forward for utilization. So when you draft, I just say when there is a BRICS meeting, so you have to make official statement. So before that, country negotiate what your line. So just one has to choose their words very carefully what they are going to say in the meeting. Like India was very much interested that Russia should include a line that there is a growing terrorism and harbored by Asian parts. So it will be indication this is Pakistan and China nexus is there. So Russian said कि this word नहीं हो सकता है, it has to be deleted. Let's talk about कि whosoever is harboring. Fine. Then Chinese term was there. China will, language ऐसी होती, China will appreciate if India, China and Russia will work together over anti-terror groups, and this is not the right time to discuss the anti-terror. So then the Chinese line of argument was that Russians should not make any statement regarding the terrorism in BRICS meeting. And what exactly Russians did, what China wanted. There was no statement come from the Russian side. It was the Chinese who come forward and talk about terrorism in Asia rather than saying anything who is harboring, and it appealed to counter terrorism. So somewhere it was an assault, or it was a kind of war announcement. Look, don't blame China for helping Pakistan. We ourselves are looking forward to eliminate terrorist groups. And Russians was nowhere in this discussion. Entire world was surprised. Russia itself is facing so much of problem of terrorism. Then why not Russians are out about this one? But China had a deal with the Russian side, and they are quite successful in their diplomacies. ये जो statement आता है वो बहुत ही carefully crafted होता है कि what exactly, because all writers use the similar statement to write the entire article, sometimes the entire book. So it is around what is the inherent meaning of those things and how it get fit under the greater, what we say, policy frameworks. So here we should understand the Russia and China relationship. तो absolute statement नहीं देना है कि Russian and Chinese are coming closer in order to are aligning, and their alignment might come against the Indian side. We are simply talking about Russian and Chinese alignment are more or less Russian quest or Russian search for its old role. On the other hand, from the Chinese, it is for the new role. You will find out both are doing the same. One is looking for the old role, and the other one is trying to get the new role that it should enhance the role of the Chinese side. So definitely their close associations, their close association must be perceived in perspective or in context rather than outrightly rejecting it or absolutely examining it. Is it clear? So this is how you can see Russia and China relationship. हम यहाँ सिर्फ इतना कहेंगे कि Russia is undermining the Indian concern regarding the Chinese design in Indian Ocean region or in South Asia. हम सिर्फ ये कह रहे हैं कि भाई आपको हमारी बात समझ में नहीं आ रही है और आप उतना सीरियस नहीं ले रहे हो हमारी बात को. टेक्निकली कहने का मतलब है यू नॉट टेकिंग इट दैट मच सीरियस एंड रशियंस आर नो वी आर टेकिंग इट सीरियस. बट this line of difference is all about the negotiation. It's all about the negotiations. So कभी आपको ये नहीं लगना चाहिए कि this relationship is a kind of bonding or it is a kind, it's more or less a kind of, I'm not using the word opportunistic alliance, but it's somewhere because everyone is aligning for the certain interest. So even they are aligning, but this alignment has lot of limitation and restrictions. This alignment have lot of restriction and elements. Last year interview में पूछा गया था, do you think that कि Russians are gradually turning against India? Russians are gradually turning against India. So the line of the argument is, it seems to be not. They are not turning against the India, they are more into serving their own interest. And it has been misperceived that it is turning against the Indian side. Still, जब भी अगर आप ऑन पेपर देखोगे तो आपको बिल्कुल दिखेगा कि इंडिया एंड रशिया आर मच क्लोज. देखिए ये बड़ी समस्या है कि हमको ये लगता है कि वी शुड लिव इन अ वर्ल्ड वेयर देयर शुड बी ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट. देयर इज नो पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट, isn't it? There is always a gray. So ऐसा नहीं कि if Russians are there, if the Russians are there, so Russians should be only India's friend. This is. So definitely they are going to be the Chinese friend, they are going to be the Pakistani friend. Now you have to ensure that how much benefit you can extract and how much, I could say, convince them to limit their relationship with the other country. You cannot say कि don't share economic relationship. You can say limit your defense relationship, or to put pressure, just reduce your own defense imports. Russia will understand कि भाई ये पाकिस्तान को नहीं बेचना है. That's simple. There are very clear lines are there. So here we should analyze the thing in that way. हम बार-बार सीधा-सीधा लिखते हैं. And while writing also, you should take that articulation कि definitely there is a growing concern of defense relationship of Russians and Chinese, Russians and Pakistani. It is undermining the India's security concerns. This will be the way of writing when we are talking about. ठीक है, this is what. अब इसमें एक नई चीज है, इसको आप इस पॉलिटिक्स को उल्टे तरह समझेंगे. जैसे कि when we talk about Russia and China, Russians are worried about Chinese also. In Central Asia and specifically in their Siberian area, they are worried about the way everywhere Chinatown is there, the way Chinese labor movement is there, and even they are taking out trickle down effect and all economic benefits, and it is making worry for the Indian side. So now Russians are looking forward for Indian engagement in their Far East. अभी recent announcement है when our Prime Minister visited. तो देखिए वो पूरी डील तो इकोनॉमिक है. This entire deal is economic. So why Russians are inviting India, and although Chinese are working in that, Chinese तो Far East में already काम कर रहे हैं. They are working over there. Their company CNPC has a 3 important blocks there. Then why India is invited to work there? So it is all about that Indian working style. Like, it will help to develop Russian infrastructure. It will engage Russian laborers in such projects over, and it will consolidate overall India-Russia relationship. It will help to create a balance against the Chinese domination in the region, what is Central Asia. Because Russians cannot counter China economically. That could be done by the Indian side. और जो रशियन इकोनॉमी है बहुत नॉन डाइवर्सिफाइड इकोनॉमी है. They are highly focused on oil, gas and energy basically. So, they need countries where the economy is highly diversified. This is one of the important reason they are looking for the Indian cooperation in the far East region. लिखेंगे थोड़ा सा. Please write down. In September 2019, Indian Prime Minister visited to Russia and signed two important deal. Two important deal तो कम से कम 5-7 साल भी. Two important deal. One is related to energy. One is related to energy. उसके आगे लिखेंगे nuclear energy, natural gas. And second one, defense and maritime connectivity. ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट डील. नेक्स्ट पॉइंट लिखेंगे Russia pledged to triple bilateral trade to $30 billion by 2025, and also signed a 5-year roadmap for cooperation in hydrocarbon sector. A 5-year roadmap cooperation in hydrocarbon sector. Such engagements should be seen as Russian attempts to reduce footprint of China in Central Asia as well as Far East Russia. Full stop करके newly proposed, what is that maritime route? Write down. Chennai to Vladivostok, maritime route. Would not only increase, would not only increase India's presence in the China-dominated South China Sea, but it is also seen as a step forward countering China's Belt and Road Initiative. Next point. The purpose of inclusion of India in EEF, Eastern Economic Forum, in EEF, to provide India a role of potential balancer against China's overwhelming presence in the Russian Far East. Full stop. आगे लिखेंगे. It will also help Russia to restrict illegal influx of Chinese nationals into the Russian Far East. फुल स्टॉप करके लिखेगा, रशिया सी इट एज अ डेमोग्राफिक इन्वेजन. ये खास बात इसलिए कि 1960 there was a clash because they share border there and a huge Chinese population was there. In 1960 there was a confrontation of the local people, Russians and Chinese, and hundred of the people have died. So if the similar thing happened, उस समय क्या हुआ था? It was the Russians who killed Chinese. Now the number of the Chinese are more than the Russians. So they are worried about this. So लिखेंगे, the newly, please write down, new found relationship in Far East. It seems to be complementary for India and Russia. As the Russian Far East needs capital, technology and markets, while India is a country with a labor surplus and resource deficit, comma, in need of energy, mineral resources and farming land. चलिए एक चीज आप अपने से पढ़ेंगे, तैयार करेंगे, ओपनिंग ऑफ जनरल स्टडीज में ऑप्शन में नहीं आएगा, ओपनिंग ऑफ नॉर्थ सी रूट, ओपनिंग ऑफ नॉर्थ सी रूट एंड implication for trade route, implication for trade routes passing via South China Sea, passing via South China Sea. आप इस पे जनरल आंसर भी लिख सकते हैं, बिकॉज जनरल स्टडीज में हो सकता है, प्रीलिम्स में भी हो सकता है. जस्ट सी दैट आर्किटिक काउंसिल भी थोड़ा पढ़िएगा, ये प्री के लिए है, ये सब इसमें नहीं आएगा. आर्किटिक काउंसिल, व्हेन इंडिया बिकम द मेंबर ऑफ द आर्किटिक काउंसिल, and who are the permanent members, what are the different politics, this all might be important from the prelims purpose. चलिए, we'll continue tomorrow I'll start with कल सैटरडे है क्या? नहीं, ठीक है, कल हम अफ्रीका और लैटिन अमेरिका खत्म करेंगे. सेम 12 सेम 10. थैंक यू टू ऑल ऑफ यू.